America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, it's another exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If you have not yet, please do me a favor, hit that like button. Help us out by sharing the show. And if you live in Tennessee or another part of the country that is voting today, I'd like to hear about it. I see over there on YouTube, somebody did vote today. I am always interested to hear what the experience is like, see if more people are getting out there. Did you volunteer? Did you actually work in the election? So we've got a smattering of different types of news today. A couple of good clips gone from some of our featured players. News on fraud. Some investigations. And a lot more. Sasbrag 7780, I appreciate you as well. All right, so I hope you guys are ready, because we're about to get into it. So you know what I need from you? I need you to sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this. All right, this one is strategic because modern military dominance is really just going to come down to one thing, and that's what's in the supply chain. And you see, right now, we've got a critical gap that Washington is spending billions of dollars to close. Every jet, every tank, almost every piece of munition in some way contains something the U.S. hasn't mined in nearly a decade: tungsten. And Washington is moving fast to solve that issue. The Pentagon, through the DoD, has spent close to $10 million to restart domestic tungsten production, and President Trump signed Project Vault. It's a $12 billion critical mineral stockpile plan aimed at breaking foreign dominance and reshaping the mining sector here at home. An additional $30 billion was announced at the Critical Minerals Ministerial to accelerate domestic production and secure strategic supply chains. America needs its own tungsten, and the war in Iran has been a stark reminder of just how much. U.S. defense needs thousands of drones, missiles, and ammunition, and tungsten plays a big role in making that possible. This isn't just a metal, it's a symbol. National resilience. And this is where Vault Strategic Mining comes into play. They trade under KNOX in Canada and KNXFF here in the US, and they're building what could be the most strategic tungsten project portfolio in the entire US. And with billions of defense dollars on the line, the question is, can they get the job done? Vault is built around a specific operating model. You see, they acquire historic mines and use modern exploration techniques to maximize value, and with tungsten prices near record highs, they're in the right place at the right time. Vault controls a historical mining portfolio, all located strategically in mining-friendly states, and their flagship project is in Nevada. It's a proven historic mine that operated under a defense minerals exploration contract around World War II. Vault isn't just exploring for tungsten, they're quite literally revitalizing tungsten. What helped defend the free world in the past is being brought to ensure U.S. national security for the future. Tungsten is vital to both industry and governments around the world. Prices have been climbing as governments and manufacturers race to secure reliable Western supply chains outside of China,
because they quite literally still dominate the market. That's why districts like the Great Basin are starting to attract a lot of serious attention. Vault's flagship project is located in one of North America's most historically productive tungsten belts, a region the USGS estimates could host around 168 tons of tungsten oxide all in the ground. With today's prices, that translates into potential in situ value of $30 to $50 billion. And with demand accelerating, projects in proven jurisdictions with historical potential could become a lot more valuable as the market catches up. That's a lot of dollars and a lot of metal, and Vault is right in the middle of it. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because in less than 12 months, the United States has taken 5 major actions to rebuild critical mineral supply chains, including Executive Order 14231, Project Vault, and a really important State Department ministerial with 55 foreign ministers focused directly on critical minerals. And the reason is simple. America's defense supply chain depends on tungsten, and the U.S. is no longer mining it commercially. That's why Washington has committed $12 billion through Project Vault and additional federal support to secure domestic supply. Washington has shifted into overdrive on this issue. It's more than a resource story. It's a national priority. The Pentagon right now is actively funding domestic supply chains for the exact tungsten that Vault has in the ground. This isn't wishful thinking. It's a White House directive, and Vault isn't sitting still. They're systematically assembling what's shaping up to be a massive U.S. tungsten portfolio with the potential to solve the U.S. needs. So if you want to learn more about this tungsten story and a team that's delivered big results in the past, check out the link in the description, and a big thanks to Vault Strategic Mining for making today's video possible. The only problem with depleted uranium is that you leave radiation around for babies to ingest and for people to have their DNA degraded. So everybody, hope you are having a wonderful day. And like I said, if you have voted today, I would like to hear about it in the chat. So we've got primary races in Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, Kentucky, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. Tuesday, May 26th is the next one coming up in Texas. And we do have some news about that Texas race today. So if you have voted, go ahead and let us know about it in the chat. I know the election system is not perfect, but I still believe that it is important to actually get out there and vote. And if you'll give me a second. All right, so we are going to begin our stories today. First of all, by talking about the tragic shootings yesterday at the Islamic Center in San Diego, because there are some key details about the shooters that are not being widely reported. Now, yesterday it was reported that there were 2 young teenage boys who were the likely perpetrators. They were identified as a 17 and an 18-year-old boy. Their names are Cain Clark and Caleb Velasquez. But what's really the interesting part about this is that they were trans lovers. They were high school trans lovers, teen shooters who, for whatever reason, decided to shoot up the Islamic Center and then suicided each other at the end of the day. Now, they keep saying 5 people are dead, and I don't know if that includes the shooters themselves or if it is the security guard and then 4 people that were on site. They're being very cagey about this in San Diego because they don't want everybody to know that it's yet another act of transgender violence happening in the United States of America. The funniest part to me is that yesterday, as this story was playing out all over the mainstream media, they were prepared to say that, oh, well, it's an Islamic center, so it must be an act of right-wing hate. It must be neo-Nazis. And, of course, they want to destroy the brand new multicultural America that we're trying to build here. Islam is here to stay, and the only people who are ever going to stand against it are the neo-Nazis. Well, I guess you can now count the trannies among those who are standing in the way of the spread of Islam. So 2 senior law enforcement officials did speak on condition of their ability to do so, describing the official identification of Cain Clark, 17, and Caleb Velasquez. I don't know which was the top and which was the bottom.
I don't know which one goes as the woman. I don't know what his name is that he prefers to go by, but that doesn't matter anymore because now he is no longer with us. Now, there is no motive. However, apparently one of these young men did provide some sort of a letter or a manifesto of some kind to one of their mothers. That, of course, has not been released. And as I said, the police are being very cagey about the whole thing. In fact, they did a press conference, and they opened the press conference by saying, the one thing you will not hear us mention today is the identities of the people who perpetrated this act. Now, if it was a white man wearing a swastika, you can guaranteed they would have gone out there with a picture of this guy. They would have pasted his first, middle, and last name all over every headline in the world, okay? It would have been everywhere. But of course, because of the identities of these people, they're not going to tell us much of anything about them. So maybe we'll get some new information. We do have a photograph of one of them, though. And I don't know, again, whether it's Kane Clark or Caleb Velasquez. All I can tell you is that the one with the long hair appears to be the girl in the relationship. So I don't know. We'll find out more, I'm certain, and hopefully they will continue to report as they always do. Let me say thank you very much to G-Quist, who says, I voted in Texas today, in Texas, just before the endorsement. Bye-bye, rhinos. Yes, we will get into that endorsement in just a moment. But first of all, we're going to hear from Judge Jeanine Pirro, now Attorney General of the District, not Attorney General, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, because as reported yesterday, that takeover by a crowd of rowdy youths in Washington, D.C. at a Chipotle over the weekend did end up on her radar. And she is now specifically going after the parents of all of those young individuals who were involved in that disturbance. So let's take a listen.
Lawrence, the truth is that I'm going to get what I need one way or the other. I'm not going to let some politician determine whether or not D.C. is going to be safe. Look, the citizens of the nation's capital have the right to expect that they will be safe. In fact, they have a right to demand it. And when these individuals come out and you see what's going on that screen right there, and they don't want to help in tamping that down, then I will do whatever I need to do to get charges filed. And if there's anything that is, a fundamental belief, it is that the law will be followed in the district now that President Trump has made a determination to make D.C. safe and beautiful as well. Look, parents have a fundamental responsibility to control their children. It's their children, not the government's children. And in the end, if parents do not step up and stand in the place of their children, then we're going to prosecute the parents and the children. And I can do it through truancy at schools and working with the chancellor of the schools. I can do it with the family court. I have talked to the local attorney general, who has indicated that he will work with us. I can get it through the courts. Person in need of supervision. Who are their parents if they're already a court order requiring that they follow fundamental rules from the family court? I've got a lot of opportunities to go after these parents, and no one is going to stop me from doing that. And the shame of all this is that the taxpayers end up footing the bill for the damage, for the extra police. And what we saw at Chipotle the other night is an example of what's to come. And we're not going to tolerate it. And whatever we need to do to get it done, we'll do.
Personally, I'm very interested to see exactly what is going to be done, because these kids, and I don't know how old they are again, they could be anywhere from 13 to 19. A lot of these kids look a lot bigger than, say, just like your average 14-year-old. So I'm not convinced that they're all minors, but I am convinced that their parents are all shit. And their parents seem to be the only way that perhaps anything is going to be done about this. So I look forward to seeing what's going to happen here, because this is high time that something needs to be done. So I'm glad that they're finally addressing it. Now, the big news earlier today was that President Trump finally threw his endorsement behind Ken Paxton, who is, of course, running for the Texas Senate Republican spot against incumbent and a rhino, John Cornyn. Now, neither of them had received more than 50% of the vote back in March. So this is a runoff election. It's interesting because President Trump had initially suggested that Ken Paxton drop out of the race. That was obviously not something Ken Paxton was willing to do, and I'm really glad that he didn't, and I think that the people of Texas are glad that he didn't as well. Now, as soon as President Trump dropped this endorsement for Ken Paxton on the prediction markets, John Cornyn's possibility of winning this election dropped to 8%, and Ken Paxton's percentage of winning this election jumped up to 92%. So this was President Trump's full statement. The highly respected Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, an America First patriot, someone who has always been extremely loyal to me and our amazing MAGA movement, is running for the United States Senate to represent a place I love and won big 3 times with 6.4 million votes in 2024, the most votes in the history of the state by far. I just love how President Trump always gives us the facts and figures of how big his wins are every single time. Hey, what's up, Watcher? I see you over there on YouTube. Good to see you, homie. I know Ken well. I've seen him tested at the highest and the most difficult levels, and he is a winner. Ken is a strong supporter of terminating the filibuster and, very importantly, the Save America Act, something which polls at 87%, including Democrats, and yet they can't seem to get approved. Perhaps Ken can help move these important elements of government forward because with the filibuster, as an example, the Democrats will terminate it on their first day in office, giving us 2 extra states, D.C. and Puerto Rico, and a greatly enlarged Supreme Court of the United States, probably going with their dream number of 21 Supreme Court justices from the 9 that we currently have. And these new justices will be radical left lunatics. 2 years ago, our country was dead. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world, and I want to keep it that way. Ken Paxton will help me do that, making America bigger, better, stronger, and better than ever before. Ken is a true MAGA warrior. He has always delivered for Texas, and he will continue to do so in the United States Senate. He will tirelessly fight to continue the great growth of our economy, cut taxes and regulations. I just delivered the biggest tax cut and regulation cut in American history, and advance made in the USA, unleash American energy dominance, champion Texas oil and gas, advocate for our amazing farmers and ranchers, promote school choice, keep our borders secure, stop migrant crime, support our incredible military and veterans, safeguard our elections, and protect our always under siege Second Amendment. And then he talks about John Cornyn. John Cornyn is a good man, and I worked well with him, but he was not supportive of me when times were tough. And despite having the most successful economy in the history of our country during my first term, and with all the many other things that I accomplished, secure border, military dominance, Space Force, all-time high stock markets and 401ks, record jobs and economic growth, and so many other things that would be impossible to readily list, which are considered by many to be legendary, John was very late in backing me in what turned out to be a historic run for the Republican nomination, and then the presidency itself, both of which were landslide victories and, more importantly, gave us the country that we have today, the golden age of America. And when we finish up with Iran, which will not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, you will see numbers that have never been generated by our country before, as opposed to the disaster of the previous administration. Ken Paxton has gone through a lot. In many cases, very unfairly, but he is a fighter, and he knows how to win. Our country needs fighters and also loyalty to the cause of greatness. We can never allow what happened to the United States of America during the corrupt Biden administration to happen again. In Texas alone, just look at the border, with the highest level criminals allowed to run through your state, totally unvetted and unchecked through an open border policy that was a laughingstock all over the world. I came in and fixed it immediately. I will not permit those dark and dangerous days to come back. We have already made America great again, but now we want to make our nation better than ever before. Therefore, Ken Paxton has my complete and total endorsement to be the next United States Senator for the great state of Texas. Ken Paxton will never let you down. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Now, of course, Ken Paxton responded and said, I am incredibly honored to have President Trump's complete and total endorsement. End scene. That's all he needed to say. But he does continue. No one ever fought harder for the American people than President Trump, and I look forward to championing his America First agenda in the Senate. Ken Paxton, I think, is probably going to do a great job. He was truly a fighter for President Trump from the very get-go. He was the only attorney general across these 50 United States who stood up after the 2020 election was so clearly stolen. We're getting more information about that every single day. I think Ken Paxton has been a fighter for Texas. He's been a fighter for the rights of the people of Texas. He will be a fighter not only for Texas, but also for the United States of America when he does arrive in the Senate come January. Now, of course, you have to ask yourself, this has got to have hurt a couple of people. Ken Paxton John Cornyn being most affected among them. But you know who else was probably most affected was John Thune, because John Thune and John Cornyn are butt buddies. They love each other. And John Thune has helped John Cornyn put a whole bunch of money into his campaign, done whatever he could for the National Republican Senatorial Committee to try to help him win. Of course, after the disastrous showing in the original primary election, they completely pulled out all the money that they were willing to spend on him. They looked at John Cornyn and they said, you know what? We've already spent over $100 million. We do not need to sink anymore. It's pretty obvious Ken Paxton is the guy. And so John Thune has essentially been holding out on the Save America Act because he wanted President Trump to endorse John Cornyn. Now, there was no guarantee that even if President Trump was to endorse John Cornyn, that John Thune would get the Save America Act through. He's weak. He's a rhino. He doesn't deserve to be there. Now, somebody on YouTube yesterday said something that, I felt like I have to address. They said, why is Trump going after Massey? Why isn't he going after Traitor Thune? Okay, well, the quick and easy answer is that John Thune is not running for re-election. Choose your battles and understand the way that President Trump is playing the game. Massey is not doing what he needs to do to be loyal to the mission of making America great again. Sure, he's got his own ideas about what making America great again means. He's got his own standards and his own victories that he wants to stand on. And oftentimes, unfortunately, for Thomas Massey, that puts him at odds with the president. Doesn't need to be that way, but that's what Thomas Massey has essentially held himself up to be. He wants to be this bastion of liberty, but at the same time, we've got a country to run, and Congress is totally ineffective. They basically do nothing because they can't get their asses in gear unless it's going to be something that's putting money in their own pockets. Tom Massey has been great at standing in the way of Congress trying to spend more of your money. But there are a lot of other things that if he only would have been willing to get behind, then this whole war with Massey and Trump wouldn't have happened. But the reason you don't see the same attention being paid to John Thune is because John Thune is not running for re-election. So President Trump is not going to put his efforts in the public when it comes to that. Now, on occasion, he has gone out and posted and said Thune needs to get the Save America Act passed. But I think it's quite obvious that John Thune is not going to do whatever President Trump wants him to do. And if John Thune was running for re-election, then President Trump pretty quickly would choose someone that he was going to endorse in his place. In the meantime, John Thune is the leader of the Senate. And so President Trump is forced to work with him within a given framework. So very short answer, that is why you don't see President Trump just attacking John Thune on a daily basis. So John Thune did come out and give a statement after getting the unfortunate news that his roommate was going to have to move out. So let's go ahead and hear from him.
Given that you've spent months trying to persuade the president to endorse John Cornyn in the Texas primary, and given that the NRSC has invested heavily to help Cornyn win that primary, how personally disappointed or frustrated are you with the president's decision to endorse Ken Paxton today?
Well, I think you all know my position on this issue. I've made it very clear for months now. And Senator Cornyn is a principled conservative. He is a very...
He looks like he's going to cry, doesn't he? He looks like he's going to cry.
Effective senator for the state of Texas. And but none of us control what the president does. He made his decision about that. That doesn't change the way I feel I am certainly supportive of, will continue to be supportive of Senator Cornyn and his reelection.
How much harder, if you made it to keep the majority, how much harder has the president's decision here made it for you? The number one job to keep the Republican majority, given your concerns about Ken Paxton's viability as a candidate.
We look at, lots of races around the country, and the majority runs through a lot of different states. We have 24 seats up this time. The Democrats have only 9, so we've got a lot more ground to defend. We also have a couple of offensive opportunities. So, one state doesn't determine the outcome of this election, but obviously we care about every state, and we care about helping see our incumbents succeed. That being said, I feel very good about where we are. As I've said before, I think when it comes to winning elections, it starts with quality candidates. Then you got to have them.
What good are elections if the job you are hired to do, you don't actually do? The Senate is just as ineffectual, it would seem, as the House. The House marginally less so. But the one thing that I think most people in America care about, ensuring that our elections are real, that our elections are safe and secure, is the one thing that John Thune continues to refuse to address. And that is a problem. That's a huge, huge problem.
Record of accomplishment to run on. You've got to have resources to get that message out, tell that story to the American people, and then you've got to have a really substantial effort to get out the vote, a ground game. And I feel confident in all those elements.
You've also got to have the support of the people who are going to be casting ballots, assuming that those ballots are being counted and they actually mean something. We'll find out.
In all the key states where we're going to have competitive elections this year, and I'm very confident we'll hang on and maybe even expand the majority of the United States Senate, which is counter, I know, to the sort of the narrative these days. But the truth of the matter is, we've got the right candidates in the right places at the right time, and with the right resources, we're going to win some races.
All right, so kind of just continuing to plug along, doing basically nothing. Now, here's the other thing, is that Cornyn is not dropping out. He knows that he's going to lose. But, much like, who's that guy from Texas? Well, I don't know. Here's the thing. Cornyn has nothing outside of this, all right? Like he's been in the Congress. He's been in the Senate for many, many years. Once he leaves, he loses all relevance. He is certainly not popular among the people of Texas, so it's not like he's going to be some kind of minor celebrity, probably not going to get invited to do any speaking engagements. The best he could hope for would be to go work in the private sector for one of the special interests that he helped out while he was there in the Senate. Now, a lot can happen between now and the 26th, but it's pretty obvious from all of the polling and the results from the initial primary election that John Cornyn is done. It would be best for him, if he wanted to have any saving of his relevancy after this election is over, that he would go ahead and just say, you know what, I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to withdraw my candidacy. Everybody can vote for Ken Paxton because I can see you want Ken Paxton. But maybe he's hoping that the fake and gayness of the election system is going to come and back him up. And then he is going to find himself continuing to keep his seat. Now, if that happens, man, that would really throw a monkey wrench in everything, but it would give an opportunity to expose the same type of fraud that we know exists in Texas, as we know is all over the blue states, the entirety of the United States. Let's be clear. All right, so John Cornyn says that he's going to be staying in the race, and he said, I have worked closely with President Trump through both of his presidential terms and voted with him more than 99% of the time, which is not true. That's absolutely not true. He has consistently called me a friend in this race. It is now time for Texas Republican voters to decide if they want a strong nominee to help our GOP candidates down ballot and defeat Talrico in November, or a weak nominee who jeopardizes everything we care about. I trust the Republican voters of Texas. Well, if you trust the Republican voters of Texas, then you can go ahead and kiss your seat goodbye. That's just the way that it is. All right. Now, we have routinely talked about some of President Trump's more puzzling endorsements. This is one of them. I'm not familiar with this guy at all, but this is a candidate that President Trump has endorsed for Congress in Arizona. His name is Jay Feely. I don't know who else is running against Jay Feely in Arizona, but certainly if I was living in Arizona, Jay Feely would not be the man that I would vote for. So his comments recently were about Haitians and like the fact that he's cool with them eating dogs and cats. Not that he's like upset that they might be killing pets, but he's upset that President Trump would call it out. So he's got a history, I guess, of kind of bashing Trump, and he also has his own ties to the Clintons. And recently he was talking about his top competitor, who is an Arizona state representative and the Freedom Caucus member. His name is Joseph Chaplik. I guess he's called Mr. Chaplik a racist, Representative Chaplik. And he apparently has said that he supports the mass importation of Haitian refugees. I guess that he actually brought in 2 Haitian boys himself. That's a question that you may want to go look into on your own, but it seems kind of odd. He calls them part of his Haitian family. And Chaplik has gone after Feely and said that he's acting like a Democrat. He's playing the race card by bringing up this, Haitian kids that he adopted or helped to come into the country. And he shared a video of Feely openly admitting that he's also pro-amnesty. So not the kind of person that I think we should be inviting into government. In another clip, Feely said that he's also aiding NGOs in bringing Haitians to America so that they can receive amnesty. And then in another clip, he said that he did not want to answer questions about whether or not he would join Democrats in Congress to extend TPS for Haitians. So he seems like the kind of person that we don't need to have around. But let's go ahead and listen to these clips.
A lot of the people who are here illegally and working are actually paying into Social Security under fake numbers.
That they're never going to.
A lot of the people who are here illegally and working are actually paying into Social Security under fake numbers.
That they're never going to.
And they're never going to collect Social Security.
Yeah.
They're never going to collect Medicare. They're paying those taxes. They're actually.
You're talking to somebody who brings people in and has them live in their homes. I understand the system well. I go and work. I bring those people to those NGOs that are helping them, right? But I believe it should be legally. I have 12 people in the program right now for amnesty to come across from Haiti.
A lot of the people who are here illegally.
I don't think that's something you want to brag about personally, but.
In addition to that, you had 10 of your colleagues, or future colleagues, who voted for the TPS extension for Haitian illegal immigrants. Really came as a shock to a lot of people. Yeah. Where do you stand on that, and how does this caucus remain united as the Democrats are standing strong?
And that's the most important thing. And I think, if you've looked over the last year, I've been disappointed at conservatives and Republicans at not coming together, not coalescing together, fracturing. Ever since Charlie Kirk was murdered, we've seen the Republican Party separate. And when
No, even before Charlie Kirk was murdered, none of us wanted amnesty for anybody. We didn't want a whole bunch of people coming in from a whole bunch of different countries, and I would think that most of us were on the same page about the idea that immigration was completely out of control, legal or illegal. Either way, we got too many bodies coming to this country, and we have too many people who are just coming here on a free ride. So, I don't think there's a fracture. I think maybe people just feel like it needs to be talked about because obviously before, not as many people were.
When you look at the two parties, they've never been further apart ideologically. So keep the big picture in mind. Understand who we're fighting against, not ourselves. We're fighting against somebody who wants to fundamentally change our country.
It's like because I have a Republican or an R next to my name, you should just get on board with all of the bullshit that I want to talk about or that I think is most important and that I want to do to you as an American. Doesn't matter if it's actually exactly the same as the party that I'm saying that we're fighting against or the people that ideologically we disagree with. Just because I'm a Republican, we can't fight. That is such bullshit. This idea of forced unity, for this idea of cohesion. No. We align ideologically. We don't align simply because somebody says that they identify as something. That's such bullshit.
They want to institute democratic socialism. They've embraced Mondavi and AOC and Bernie Sanders. That's who the face of the party is now. So we have to make sure we keep that,
All of those people want amnesty. All of those people want mass immigration.
Certainly, when you look at FISA and how important it is to be able to have that and to get an extension of that, we have to make sure that we get that done for the safety of our country. I mean, you look at all the things that are going on right now. President Trump is the only one who has put the safety of our country first and foremost. Democrats didn't do it. For 4 years, they left the border open, let tens of millions of illegals come in. They put politics before the protection of the American people. Everything we do starts in government with protecting the American people.
That 11th commandment, so true.
This guy's talking out of both sides of his
And
mouth.
they're never going to collect Social Security. A lot of the,
Hang on, I need to stop this. Yeah, turn that off.
they're never going to collect
No.
Medicare. They're paying the
Okay. So what else did he say? All right. So then I guess he went on a local Arizona news channel, Mr. Feely right there. And he condemned President Trump's comments about the Haitians eating the pets in Ohio, which is not conspiracy. It's not a lie. It's not inflammatory. It's real. It happened. It's probably still happening. And I guess that at one time he even called the Arizona Republican Party Nazis, which, again, seems like a very Democrat type of behavior pattern. And he said that he had interesting conversations with his Haitian family, noting that, yes, in fact, they do eat dogs and cats in Haiti. And he defended their choice to engage in that practice here in America, despite the fact that might be your dog or that might be your cat. And he even said that might make a good meal. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
I'm going to
viewers watching might also recall President Trump's comments during the 2024 presidential campaign. You probably do as well. He made comments on repeated false rumors that Haitian immigrants in Ohio were eating pets. Remember that?
I do. And we had interesting conversations with the two Haitian men that came. And, you know, when you go down there to Haiti and you spend a lot of time like I have, you understand that when somebody has no food at all, that they're going to find whatever it is, whether it's a dog or a cat, anything in Haiti. I don't want to be derogatory about people. I think that's where President Trump and I differ, is that I think you can articulate your values and your beliefs without being derogatory about others.
He was talking about them eating pets here in Ohio, dogs and cats. Mm-hmm. You're saying that's going on?
I'm saying that the Haitian men that we brought here and we talked about, they said, yeah, I could see that happening. There was somebody who did that in Haiti. And
the reporter was trying to spin a narrative of this. Oh, this is a lie. This doesn't happen. President Trump and his hateful comments. And here, from the horse's mouth, his face, he was just like, oh, wow, okay. If it really happens, if you know Haitians and they said it actually happens, go talk to a Haitian. They'll tell you. They got no problems grabbing a swan from the park or grabbing your cat from the side of the road.
Comes here and sees a swan and says, oh, that might make a good meal.
Okay. Did you talk to the president about that after he made those remarks?
No, we've never talked about that. You know, I'm honored to have the endorsement of the president, to be friends with him for a long time. And that doesn't mean you're going to agree with everything that he says and does either.
All right. Got to end it there. Lots more.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, we're just going to cut it short. I had a bunch more questions. I was hoping that you were going to say some more negative things about the president, but I don't know, man. That guy, a lot of times I think that President Trump endorses people simply just based on numbers. Maybe people are coming to him and saying, you know, I mean, this is who you should endorse, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that's who you should vote for. So, all right, before we continue on to the next section, I do have one very quick message from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, I'm sure you hear a lot about crypto. I know that I've been very interested in crypto for a long time, but there is one important point that I think a lot of people miss, and it's the fact that crypto was actually created so that you personally would own and control your money. It wasn't created for criminals. It wasn't created for some nefarious purpose. It was after the 2008 financial crisis. Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So then instead of a bank holding your money and potentially you losing it or delaying your transfers, limiting access to your money, it actually puts you in control of that cash. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, or you've been told that you can't withdraw that much money, then you know that you've had that type of problem before, and it can happen. So fast forward to today. Everybody's heard about crypto now, but getting started might feel a little bit complicated. This is one of the reasons I love Rumble Wallet, because it takes all the complexity out of it. It makes it very simple. You can choose what kind of crypto you want to buy: Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, even digital-backed gold, which is real gold backed with, digital gold backed by real gold. And it's not complicated to set up. It connects directly with MoonPay, so you can use your credit card, your debit card, or your bank, and you'll be up and running in just a few minutes. And once you're set up, you can even then support your favorite Rumble creators like myself or others directly. You connect your Rumble account to it. It'll see who you're subscribed to and who's live. And so you can do this right now. Scan that QR code on screen, or you just click the link in the description below, and then you very easily download the Rumble wallet. And from there, you set up that wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game. And in just a few minutes, you can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. And if you do choose to support the channel, thank you very, very much. And thank you to Rumble for supporting us as well. Righteous Anger 1776 says, payday alert. Are you saying it's your payday? Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And congrats. And let's see. I thought maybe I had something over there unpilled, but I don't. All right. Now, moving past Mr. Feely. Today we got word that the House Oversight Committee has again officially referred Ilhan Omar for the investigations into the revisions she made to her net worth. If you'll remember, she claimed that after claiming that her net worth was around $30 million, she revised it down to about $100,000, and she said that it was some type of an error. It's not like she added a zero, like she had much, much, much more money than what she now says she actually does. Now, an ethics investigation is not going to be a criminal investigation, but it could be enough to expel Ilhan Omar from Congress. And of course, any of the findings that they make from the course of the ethics investigation, that can then be passed off to the Department of Justice. And that's a wonderful thing, because it just so happens that despite a couple of hints that perhaps there was a Department of Justice investigation going on today, J.D. Vance gave a 100% yes to the Daily Caller when asking whether or not Ilhan Omar is actually under investigation by the DOJ. The short answer is that yes, she is. So let's go ahead and listen to the vice president's answer.
Okay. I figured out finally how the seating chart works.
I want to ask you about the anti-fraud task force. You previously mentioned that Ilhan Omar seemed to have committed immigration fraud. Do you anticipate an indictment against her, an indictment related to that situation?
Yeah, so Reagan, I don't want to prejudge an investigation. I mean, you read the things about Ilhan Omar and about, who she married and whether she didn't marry this person or that person. It certainly seems like something fishy is there, but everybody's entitled to equal justice under the laws. So we're going to investigate it. We're going to take a look at it. If we think that there's a crime, we're going to prosecute that crime. And that's something the Department of Justice is looking at right now. Okay.
So yes, I see it in the chat. Oh, it seems to be that something untoward has taken place. It might be that there are some illegal activity. J.D. Vance is being very cautious with his language because, of course, the findings of that Department of Justice investigation have not been announced yet. Those announcements won't come unless the indictments are handed down from a grand jury. So that's what he's waiting for. That's why his language has to be couched within very certain parameters. And frankly, I appreciate that, because if this was, say, me and someone had accused me of some illegal behavior and the vice president of the United States was at a press conference at the White House and said, well, yes, it sure looks like Zak Paine committed fraud, and I think he committed fraud, but I don't know, I'm just the vice president. Well, then obviously my lawyer would be able to use that. And that would not be good for the Department of Justice's case. It would create prejudice in the minds of the jury. We certainly don't want to do that. We want Ilhan Omar to have the fairest possible trial that she can. We just want there to be a trial. And of course, I think the vast majority of us, if not all of us, would like to see Ilhan Omar denaturalized and deported. So let me say thank you. Yes, Righteous Anger 1776. That was supposed to say gaydar alert, stupid autocorrect. Keep up the good work, Zach. Smash that like button. You mean like this? Gaydar, that's the gaydar alert right there. All right. And thank you for that, sir. And then Too Big for Bike says, how do you starve a Somali? Oh. Hide his food stamps in his work boots. Oh, no.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Yeah, they're not doing so good. Oh, thank you for that, Too Big for Bike. I really do appreciate it. All right. Now, continuing, we also had some testimony given by Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche today. Now, Todd Blanche was asked about the president's enemies list. I thought that it was appropriate to bring up in terms of what we just talked about with Ilhan Omar. It's often been said that Ilhan Omar is on President Trump's enemies list. Of course, you and I know that it's not an enemies list per se. It's just a list of people who have aggrieved the president, people who were part of the grand conspiracy to take him down. Ilhan Omar, simply just part of that criminal machine who have lied about the president and who have, along the way, committed their own crimes. So if or when Ilhan Omar is indicted, denaturalized, and deported, it won't be because the president has deemed her a worthy target. It will be because of the crimes she herself has committed as someone who committed immigration fraud, allegedly, or someone who committed COVID fund fraud, allegedly, or somebody who committed ethics violations, most likely. So let's go ahead and hear from Todd Blanche. I continue to enjoy listening to Todd on a daily basis.
The Department of Justice and the FBI have evidence that a crime's been committed. And that doesn't, I mean, you're talking about Epstein.
You commit to pursue regardless of political affiliation?
Excuse me, Senator?
Do you commit to pursuing investigations free of prejudice about party affiliation?
Of course, yes.
Well, you say of course, but this president has repeatedly spoken of an enemies list that he wants to go after. And I must say, it's one of the symbols of the breakdown of a democratic republic when a president uses his...
Hold on. Horn Dog says, why do birds fly over Somalia upside down? Because there's nothing worth shitting on.
Department of Justice, which you now had to go after his perceived political enemies. I hope you won't be party to that. Thank you.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's why what happened during the Biden administration was so disgusting.
That is completely inappropriate and wrong. There is no comparison to the absolute fair-minded pursuit of justice under the previous administration and this administration's pursuit of an enemies list. Thank you.
Senator Murray.
Yeah, so this guy, obviously, he's part of that same machine. Now, the president has never said, I have an enemies list. The president has never produced an enemies list. The president may have, at certain times, listed off people who were part of the grand conspiracy to try to destroy him, destroy his presidency, destroy his family, and, of course, the United States of America. But that's not the same thing as an enemies list. It's the type of hyperbolic invective that these people love to use because they are trying to regain control of the narrative. They're trying to assert their control over the American people. For so many years, they had the ability to just say things and then have them parroted in the mainstream media. And a vast number of Americans would simply tune in to the Crap News Network and listen to it without any sort of commentary or examination of what was being said. It was just a series of sound bites that were repeated over and over ad nauseum. Now, I thought that this was fascinating. I'm sure you'll remember while President Trump was running for his second term, Mark Cuban was definitely a person who came out against him. Mark Cuban and President Trump have gone back and forth publicly on a number of occasions. But now that President Trump is doing a great job and he's done a number of different things, initiatives that are seeking to reinvigorate American business and manufacturing, Mark Cuban has come around, and Mark Cuban and Trump RX are now going into business together because Mark Cuban has a home prescription delivery business that deals in generics, which is very similar to TrumpRx.gov. So Mark Cuban appeared with President Trump earlier today and a number of people from the cabinet. And he has gone on to discuss the expansion of the Trump RX website and how Cuban's online pharmacy, which is called Cost Plus Drugs, working alongside Amazon Pharmacy and GoodRx, which is where I get my prescriptions when I need them. They're now set to list over 600 generic drugs on Trump RX, and they will be at much lower costs for consumers. Now, Cuban said these 559 of those drugs from those 600 are all going to be coming from his company. He said, I've been one of the biggest proponents of TrumpRx.com. Republicans want cheaper drugs. Independents want cheaper drugs. Democrats want cheaper drugs. And together, I think we're going to do something really special. But of course, as you know, Mark Cuban never supported President Trump. He frequently attacked him during the 2024 election season, and he definitely publicly supported Kamala Harris. Now, someone at this press conference had asked President Trump about Cuban's history as a never-Trumper, and President Trump had a witty retort to answer as to why Mark Cuban was there today. Let's take a listen.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's pretty remarkable seeing you and Mark Cuban up there, and the fact that obviously Mark endorsed Kamala Harris back in 2020.
Well, he made a mistake. It was a big mistake.
What does this say about what you two are building here?
Well, it says we love people. We love our country. He's got a good company, and he's going to do a lot of business with this. And I'm going to get drugs out through Amazon, through the whole group, and we're going to get drugs out. And Mark wanted to be a part of it. And I think Mark was very gracious. He said, this is something that really works. The first time you've seen it. And he had to believe that if he said it about me. You have to understand that. But look, I think I have a lot of respect for Mark, frankly, and I always have.
And then, sir.
Yeah.
So first of all, there's the obvious point here, which is that Mark Cuban is a billionaire. Mark Cuban wants to make money. President Trump, he is coming from a slightly different perspective. We have an elderly and aged population here in the United States, many of whom are on medications. Now, hopefully, as we become healthier as a nation, as we change our habits, as we change the things that we put into our bodies, our need to rely on pharmaceuticals will be reduced. And so as a result, also the pressure on Medicaid and Medicare and people's own pocketbooks, that will also be reduced. But in the meantime, as people continue to unfortunately require certain prescription medications to continue to live a relatively healthy, happy, and stable life, President Trump is making those things available to people. And again, Mark Cuban is not stupid. He knows where his check is being written from. And for him to go into business with President Trump, he sees not only the benefit for himself, but also the benefit for America. So I sincerely hope that as America moves into this golden age, this new renewed age of health and wellness, that we become less and less reliant on things like prescription medications, and we can begin relying on things like, nutritional supplements, health and wellness products that are going to be helping us live a happy and fulfilling life without having to artificially augment those things. Let me say thank you very much to Q Patriot Angel, who says, I just want to give a big thanks to all those who support Zak's sponsors to allow him to do what he does for us as long as he has. Thank you so much, Q Patriot Angel. I really appreciate you. And the Boom Diggity, what's up, hun? Thank you for the $50 rant. Georgia. Okay, hold on. Okay, this just happened in the last 30 minutes. So we are going to talk about Georgia in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and hold on to this. But thank you for that, and thank you for the $50 rant. I appreciate you. Thank you also over on Pilled. So the gold pills were not showing up for a minute. So thank you to Sean Joe for 2 cookies. Thank you to Darla, who says that sheriff or chief of police made me sick. I'm assuming you're talking about San Diego. Yeah, not surprising. I used to live in San Diego. It's a shithole. He was practically crying for the poor muzzies. He actually was. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Filter Dog says, yes, Judge jumps in on the Georgia Secretary of State vote. We're going to talk about that again in just a moment. Sean Joe, thank you for 3 cookies. Thick Ray says, completed my due diligence earlier today here in Philly. Voting is essential. Where we go one, we go all. Thank you, sir. Glad to hear it. 123 SKG, thank you for the cookie. Hogleg71, thank you for the cookie and the can. Filter Dog says, footage has surfaced from yesterday's San Diego mosque attack that was live streamed by the 2 teenage gunmen. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen that. We'll have to go see if we can find a copy. No thanks, Joe says, Tasty Taco Tuesday. To you, Lisa and Zach, thank you for the work. Appreciate you. God bless, and please be safe. Thank you for that. Hope you are as well. My Getter is freezing. I don't know why Getter is freezing. I'm looking at Getter right now, and it appears to be, maybe it isn't. No, it does look like it's freezing. I don't know why that would be. Everything else seems to be going okay. That's weird. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. Okay, now let me move past Mark Cuban, and we will talk about another storied, hallowed enemy of President Trump, and that would be Governor J.B. Pritzker. So President Trump appeared with a group of reporters outside of the expansion of the White House earlier today, made a couple of interesting comments about the changes that have been made to the plans and the new things that are being built there. But before he got into that, he definitely took an opportunity to slam J.B. Pritzker as a total slob and diss the lack of effort in Chicago to address crime. Let's take a listen.
Bailey or... Well, I like Darren Bailey. J.B. Pritzker's a slob of a governor. You know, he could call me and I'd send the National Guard and Chicago would have no crime. Look at Washington, D.C. Did you see the crime stats? It's down to like nothing. People go to restaurants now, new restaurants. Restaurants are all being closed in Washington. Now they're building new restaurants. It's a hot city. We have a beautiful city. We have very little crime, almost no crime. And we could have the same thing in Chicago. All he'd have to do is say, President, I don't want to have any crime in Chicago. Can you help me? Within 3 months, Chicago would be a different place.
What about the mayor, Brandon?
What can I say? He's so bad. He's so bad.
Mr. Bailey or...
J.B. Pritzker's a slob of a governor. You can't really put too fine a point on it. San Diego is not a show. Live here. I keep up the good work, brother. Listen, there are definitely areas of San Diego that were a shithole. When I moved there in 2000, it was the first place that I ever saw people doing intravenous drugs on the street. It was the first time that I ever saw somebody defecating on the street. There's a ton of migrants that were there. Maybe it's a strong characterization. There are undoubtedly good places in San Diego, but I have to say, California as a whole, I'm just not feeling it. It could be beautiful. There could be great change happening in California, but you have to get rid of some of the people who were there. All right, now let's go ahead and listen to this next clip. So President Trump here talking about the changes to the expansion of the White House. And again, several interesting comments about the exact nature of it and what's actually being put in there.
Over the top of it, it's a shield that will totally protect what's downstairs. They have a lot of things going on downstairs, and some of it you see. This goes down 6 stories. You see 3 stories because it's already been built. This will be, very shortly, this will be in the form of the roof goes along these lines. Basically, it goes outside. You see where the wood is? You're going outside of that line, and then it goes straight up. And it's all protection, and everything's together. You can't build one without the other. And what we have is we have the safest building ever built, in my opinion. You can have, and you know, the other thing is, when we're right on budget, we're right on plan. The only budget change would be that we doubled the size at the request of the military. We doubled the size, but we're right on budget, right on plan. And originally we were going to build a much smaller room, and it wouldn't have done the job. It just wouldn't have done the job. You have too many events. Like if we have President Xi coming here, we have no place to put him. We had the King and the Queen the other day, and we had 1,000 people wanted, and we ended up having 100 people sitting in a very small room. So they've been after this for a long time, but maybe more important is the safety element. This is a shield. It protects everything that's inside, everything that's on top. And, you know, obviously the White House was built in 1792. Shield.
Okay, so it's a shield. There are 6 stories underground. On top, you're going to have that ballroom. But underneath, what are you going to have underneath? President Trump talks about a hospital and military facilities. We already knew about a brand new bunker that was being built down there, but take a listen to the rest of these things President Trump mentions.
I want to take a look at the complexity. These are all different rooms down here. They're building a hospital. They're building, it's a military hospital. They're building all sorts of research facilities, also meeting rooms and rooms that go hand in hand for the military using the ballroom. And the ballroom is really a shield and protecting all of the things that are built here. This goes, as you see, it's already up to the ground. This goes down very deep. You get a better view right over here. This is down because we've already done these floors. But these are already down 2 floors. That is down about 6 stories deep. That's big stuff. Normally, when you build a ballroom, you build it flat. You just build a ballroom. It would have been built. The complexity of this, and again, it's all knit. It's all knit together between the drone proofing, the missile proofing, we have, and the drone capacity upstairs. We can have all sorts of military up, whether, I hate to use the word snipers, but we have great sniper capacity. It's built for our snipers, not the enemy snipers, our snipers. And because of the height, we get a very clear view of everything all over Washington. Yeah.
So this is obviously going to be far more complex than simply a place for President Trump and future presidents to entertain dignitaries coming in to town or to host events. You're going to have what is essentially a command and control center. And it looks like, from what President Trump is saying here, that he will be able to essentially do anything that needs to be done right there from the White House. And if the worst happens, then obviously you're going to have medical facilities right on hand. Likely it would mean that President Trump and future presidents are not going to have to go to Walter Reed Medical Center if they need to be given a physical or if they're going to need to receive some type of medical assistance. So it's quite complex, very interesting, and I think that there's probably even a lot more that we're not being told about what's going in there. So very, very cool, and I think it puts a new perspective on exactly why it was so important that the ballroom was allowed to be completed. All right, now, we do have to talk about Georgia. Now, I had great news initially, but I just heard from Boom Diggity that unfortunately, this was just reversed in the last 30 minutes. So yesterday, we reported that the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who is also running for governor, so he's a candidate in this election. And let me be clear, the election laws in Georgia are such that candidates are not allowed to be within a certain vicinity of ballots or where ballots are being counted. However, the ballots and the counting of the ballots are the express domain of the Secretary of State themselves. So Brad Raffensperger has placed himself in a very unique position where he's not allowed to do the job that he's actually supposed to be doing. So there was the announcement that he was going to be moving the counting of ballots into this secret bunker someplace in Atlanta. And also outside of the boundaries, outside of the legality of Georgia state election laws, he was not going to allow outside observers. He was not going to allow the Georgia State Election Board. He was not going to allow anyone other than whom he deemed would be appropriate to be around the counting of the ballots, which means that everything would be done in secret. Again, a contravention of the law. And as such, the Georgia State Republican Party, Senator Greg Dolezal, and a number of others filed suit against the Georgia Secretary of State. And a Fulton County Chief Judge, Ural Glanville, earlier today signed a temporary restraining order which granted bipartisan members of the Georgia State Election Board and poll watchers full access to Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's secret election bunker. Now, unfortunately, that news has been superseded by the news that apparently that has just been reversed in the last 30 minutes or so. So what we have now, Dolezal is a white man. And I believe he's also running for a position in Georgia state government. Dolezal's a patriot. I've done a lot of research on Dolezal. And, oh, hold on just a second. Hey, what's up, JR? I'm live right now, buddy. Okay, everybody in the chat needs to know that JR just has a new show that he started, I guess, the other day on Pilled. And if you are not subscribed to J.R. Majewski on Pilled and on Rumble and on YouTube, you need to make sure that you are. Also follow J.R. Majewski on Twitter. I just told everybody to make sure they're subscribed to you. I'll get a hold of you after I get off the air. Okay. So the Georgia State Republican Party Chairman, Josh McCoon, writes, "We strongly condemn the court's reversal of its decision to grant access to bipartisan observers in the election night reporting room. The initial temporary restraining order was a necessary and proper step to uphold Georgia law and restore basic transparency to the process of aggregating and reporting statewide election results. Granting observers the ability to watch every facet of that critical function was the right call. Reversing that order and denying access has inflicted serious damage. First, the court opened the door to accountability, only to slam it shut. That flip-flop undermines public confidence, not only in this specific judicial process, but in the integrity of the entire election night reporting system. Whatever the final outcome of this primary, it will be tainted by the refusal to allow bipartisan observers to watch all stages of the process. Voters deserve to see how their votes are received, verified, aggregated, and reported, not a closed-door operation shielded from scrutiny. We call on the court to immediately reinstate access for state election board members and poll watchers. Transparency is not negotiable. The people of Georgia expect and are entitled to nothing less." Now, I am going to hazard a guess right now and say that if it is not restored, then the Department of Justice is likely going to step in, and they're going to force the ability for people to have access to this, because this is, like I said, it's outside of the boundaries of Georgia state election law. And Mr. McCoon is correct. It's immediately going to taint any of the results for this election. Nobody is going to take it seriously. It's McCoon with a K, Josh McCoon. And just so we see, he is a white man. You can see him right there. And he's got an Israeli flag in his bio along with some other thing. I don't know. But he also says that Christ is king. Anyways, I don't know, man. I don't know why anybody has the flag for another country in their bio. That does not bode well for me. But either way, people need to be able to see what's going on in the count room because this is immediately going to taint any results. So thank you very much, Boom Diggity, for helping us to keep abreast of what's actually happening out there in the world, especially in regards to this. All right. Now, moving on, I guess, from the situation in Georgia, here was the original TRO that I was going to show you from Chief Judge Glanville. And this matter came before the court. The petitioner's verified petition for writ of mandamus, temporary restraining order. Let's try and figure out why this was reversed. This was ordered at 10 a.m., so that's a pretty dramatic and swift reversal. Let's go to Senator Dolezal. He's, let me see. Yeah, he's running for lieutenant governor. That's what he's running for. All right. So, yeah, Dolezal has not commented since the reversal. Okay, let's take a look. Georgia TRO reversal. And of course, I spelled it incorrectly. No results. Oh, I spelled Georgia incorrectly too. Georgia TRO reversal. And the only people talking about are the Georgia GOP. Okay. Let me real quick run over to Gateway Pundit and see if they have updated their reporting. No, I don't see any update from it. They are still reporting the original TRO. Oh, let's quick take a look at this. President Trump generally communicates with the public through social media. As we know, Kentucky voters headed to primaries today. And Thomas Massie, President Trump, I guess, went off on Thomas Massie. And, I guess Thomas Massie put out an old endorsement from President Trump. This was from a couple of years ago, the last time that he ran, that President Trump actually endorsed him.
And he says, horrible Congressman Thomas Massey put out an old endorsement from many years ago of him by me, long before I found out that he was the worst congressman in the history of our country. I endorsed Ed Gallrain, a true American patriot, which Massey knows full well. So the statement that he put out is fraudulent, just like he is fraudulent. Withdraw your fake statement, Massey, right now, President Donald J. Trump. And I actually looked for this earlier, and I didn't find it on Thomas Massey's timeline, so I don't know where that went to. Maybe Massey had put it out in his email. All right. Now, again, this was a video from Voice of Rural America celebrating the TRO. Of course, this doesn't matter now.
Hey, 11th Congressional District. I actually have an update, and I think your prayers were answered. We just got word that when we were waiting on the document, that a judge just signed off on our order from our lawsuit yesterday, forcing the Secretary of State to have observers and our State Board of Elections in to verify the process would be done properly. This is great news, guys. For once, it feels like we go through this and all the battles and whatnot. It's nice to have.
Oh, God, well, this hurts so bad. I need to figure out why they reversed this. Also, I think JR's in the chat, you guys. I don't know which chat he's in, but, oh, thank you, Boom Diggity, for another $10 rant. She says, this is the breakdown of the Georgia TRO. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I was just trying to find something. Okay, and I was actually going to go to Voice of Rural America and see if they had updated. Yeah, here it is. A Fulton County judge has rescinded the order allowing the Georgia State Election Board, but which Fulton County judge? Doesn't say which. So let's go to the tweet from Boom Diggity. Okay. So here is what is relevant. It's all about the timing. OCGA 9-10-2. Actions against state void absent notice of waiver. Any verdict, decision, judgment, decree, order, ruling, or other judicial action by any court in the state in any matter which is this state or an official of the state in his official capacity is a party defendant, intervener, respondent, appellee, or plaintiff in fee fa shall be void unless it affirmatively appears as a matter of record, either one, that the Attorney General was given 5 days advanced written notice of the adverse party or his attorney of the time set for the particular trial hearing or other proceeding as a result of which the verdict, decision, judgment, decree, order, ruling, or other judicial action was entered. Number 2, that the Attorney General or an Assistant Attorney General was present in person at the trial hearing or other proceeding. Or 3, that the Attorney General or an Assistant Attorney General has in writing waived the notice. So the Attorney General, I am guessing, was not present for this TRO that was handed down by the original judge. So in order to get the Attorney General to actually show up, they're going to have to be not complicit in Brad Raffensperger's attempts to actually... Oh, you're on YouTube. Okay. All right. Well, there he is. J.R. Majewski says he's there on YouTube. Good to see you, buddy. And JR, help people find your Pilled account if they are having issues. It looks like Angelfly says that she was unable to find you. All right. And Teresa Pagano says Cornyn is canceling his campaign and heading back to D.C. Look at that. Look how quickly the news cycle changes. John Cornyn must have gotten word that he doesn't need to spend any more money. I am canceling my campaign events for tomorrow and heading back to D.C. tonight. That means he's going to be able to vote if there's actually going to be a vote. As a member of the Budget GOP and on behalf of the nearly 32 million Texans that I am honored to represent, I will vote tomorrow AM to end the absurd and irresponsible Democratic defunding of ICE and CBP and fund their important work first in committee and then on the Senate floor. Well, finally getting back to work, John Cornyn. Good to see it. Holly Kessler. Eleanor 2000 says, Holly Kessler, email correspondence regarding election night reporting submitted open records request. The state election board seeking all email correspondence referencing election night reporting 1 hour. Okay, and they ought to, because I think that what we're going to find is that there was some type of collusion to ensure that the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, would be able to keep these impartial election investigators and witnesses out. So then, of course, it's going to make it easier for him to steal it. The AG of Georgia is Chris Carr, who is also running for office. So what, he was probably out there campaigning? Isn't Chris Carr running for the Secretary of State position, if I'm not mistaken?
Chris Carr, Georgia. I think he is running for Secretary of State, which is, well, he mentions Medicaid fraud. He knows where his money's coming from. Got to get in there and make sure that everybody knows I'm against Medicaid fraud. Okay, what are you running for, Chris? Attorney General Chris Carr to step up right away. All right. Well, where is his campaign? Okay, there it is. No, he's running for governor. That's what he's running for. Who else is running for governor in the state of Georgia? Is Chris Carr going to win just because he's like the only big name Republican that's winning? And thank you, Eleanor, for the tweet from Holly Kessler. Let's pull that up. All right, here it is. Oh, this is the actual email correspondence. Okay. I submitted an open records request to the state election board seeking all email correspondence referencing election night reporting. In response, I was provided only the initial portion of the email chain. The withheld portion was denied on the basis that the Attorney General's office was copied on the correspondence by John Furvier, thereby invoking attorney-client privilege. Because the Attorney General's office also represents the Secretary of State, it was incumbent upon the Attorney General's office to ensure the Secretary of State was fully informed of the ongoing discussion concerning election night reporting. Accordingly, any assertion that the Secretary of State was unaware of the hearing or the matters at issue is demonstrably unfounded. I therefore demand the immediate release of the complete unredacted email chain and all related records responsive to my request. It is essential that all parties be transparent. The judge be made fully aware, and all parties are held fully accountable under the law. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. Okay. So yeah, it does appear to me that there seems to be a little bit of hanky-panky taking place behind the scenes. Hang on just a second. I need to turn down my exposure a little bit. Yeah, behind the scenes, they are likely colluding to ensure that their efforts to make this election night bunker a secret that nobody gets to check in on, and ensure that this case was not going to go forward as intended. Carr is running. Yes, that's wounds are us. That's why I thought. I have not heard good things about the man. So yeah, it appears to me that he is just as corrupt as Raffensperger, which is why it doesn't surprise me that he currently is in the middle of what appears to be an effort to steal the election in the state of Georgia. All right, real quick before we continue. Okay, and it looks like I was muted on YouTube, but I just fixed it, or I should have just fixed it. So there we go. Thank you very much, you guys, for the announcement. Appreciate it. All right. Now we need to go over to California once again. California, the land of beauty, mountains, the Golden State. Sure, the land in California is beautiful. It is the leadership that is shite. They are the shitholes of the state of California. On Tuesday, Representative Vince Fong has introduced the California Accountability and Loan Repayment Act. It's called the Cal Repayment Act. It requires California to repay its outstanding $21 billion loan to the federal government before spending federal money on any other programs. Seems like a totally reasonable thing to do. The only problem is that California has spent all the money they've brought in, and if they're going to pay back anything, it means that they're going to be getting it from those unfortunate people who live in California. Now, this is one of those locations where none of the money that they took from the federal government for the COVID unemployment loans during the pandemic was ever paid back. So this bill would require California to reprioritize the repayment of their federal unemployment insurance debt before they could spend any eligible federal funds on any other program in the state. And it would require California to direct available federal funds towards that loan within 5 business days of receipt. Now, additionally, if the state diverts funds, which California state government is wont to do on occasion, it must repay the full misused amount to the federal government. Newsom's failure to repay the loans that they took has placed the burden directly on the backs of the employers in that state. So the debt has led to automatic federal tax penalties on California employers via reduced FUTA tax credits, which costs businesses roughly $84 per worker in the year of 2025, and those costs are expected to rise. In January, Representative Fong had shared details about the hidden jobs tax that Governor Newsom had pushed onto the backs of business owners. So let me show you the post that he made. And he said California employers are about to get hit with a massive tax increase, one they never voted on, one lawmakers and the governor never debated, but one that Sacramento knew was coming. At the very moment, families and employers should be seeing relief from the working families tax cuts, which are going into effect this year. California is moving in the opposite direction by raising taxes on employees and worsening the cost of living crisis, which already plagues our state. California's Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, which is a lifeline for unemployed workers, is drowning in debt. It now exceeds $21 billion. The debt was incurred during COVID when the Unemployment Insurance Fund social safety net helped countless families. But in the years since, Sacramento has failed to act to address the massive debt that was incurred during the pandemic, despite having a $100 billion surplus in recent years. And as a result of that inaction, California businesses will continue facing automatic payroll tax hikes in order to repay that debt. The debt was not driven by legitimate claims alone. As everybody here knows, because we've talked about it on so many occasions, the unemployment system during the pandemic in California was riddled with fraud. They had billions of dollars that got siphoned out of that state. Outdated systems, weak safeguards. You had people who were prisoners in California state system that were making unemployment claims. They were having money get deposited into their prison commissary accounts. And this cost the state a whole ton of money. And rather than paying that back, rather than admitting their fault, they just shifted the cost over onto employers and onto workers. So under federal law, states that fail to repay unemployment loans to the federal government, they lose a portion of the federal unemployment tax credit each year. So for California businesses, that means that they're going to be paying higher payroll taxes, which ends up costing everybody more money. So if California politicians had paid off the debt like every other state in the United States had, isn't that crazy? California is the only state that hasn't bothered to pay it back. Employers would be paying up to $434 per employee into the state's fund. But because the state failed to pay that money back, employers will be paying $84 more per employee this year. And this all goes to pay off that federal debt. So the increase is then going to grow every year until the balance gets paid off. So it guarantees that if you're a business in the state of California, your profits will be smaller.
if you're an employee in the state of California, your take-home pay is going to be smaller. Everybody gets hit except for the people serving in California state government. So Gavin Newsom had promised that if California refuses to pay its unemployment insurance debt, Congress would have tools to respond, and this is that tool that that Representative Fong has come up with. He said California's small businesses should not be punished by Gavin Newsom's mismanagement. Instead of paying off that loan, we wasted billions and lost billions more on fraud. The MyCal Repayment Act puts an end to this and delivers accountability for California taxpayers. Now, I don't know if this is going to pass. I just don't know if there's going to be the will to get this through. But hopefully it does, because California, the government of California, needs to be on the hook for this. I just don't know where the money's going to come from. I mean, that's the thing. Even if the state government of California is going to pay this off using some form of money, they're still going to have to get that money from someplace, and they're spending a lot more than they're bringing in. So I just don't know if it's even going to be possible. All right, now we need to talk about the China problem. This is an interesting clip from Senator Jim Banks. We've spoken about each and every one of these situations on their own, but when you lay them out, it paints an interesting picture, and it's notable because of something that Chip Roy has just done. So you'll probably remember Senator Dianne Feinstein, God rest her soul. She had a Chinese spy working in her office. I think it was her driver, and also working directly in her office. Governor Cuomo, Lieutenant Governor Hochul, they had a Chinese spy that worked in their administration. Representative Ro Khanna, he had a Chinese spy volunteer. I didn't even know about that one in particular. Representative Eric Swalwell, he had sex with a Chinese spy. Mayor Eileen Wang for Arcadia, she was just found to also have been a Chinese spy. All of these politicians are Democrats. For whatever reason, you don't see Republicans having sex with Chinese spies or having Chinese spies working for them.
You have a mayor of a city in California who was arrested for being a Chinese spy. Really wild, right? That's after the notorious Fang Fang incident with Eric Swalwell, which is, you know, is funny, but it's no laughing matter when you think about a Democrat who's on the House Intelligence Committee, and Speaker Pelosi protected him and kept him on that committee after a lot of us called on him to be removed, and all the while he had a relationship with a Chinese spy, right? A sexual relationship with a Chinese spy, and it's undisputed, it's a fact. And she kept him on the House Intelligence Committee. And then you had Dianne Feinstein, who I got to the Senate before, or I got to the Senate after she was gone, but she had a Chinese spy on her staff. So these types of incidents happen way too much. They seem to happen a lot in California with California Democrats. You don't see any stories like that related to Republicans, but the Democrats seem to own this mess, and they're easy targets for Chinese espionage, but it continues to proliferate in the U.S., and that's something that President Trump, I know, is focused on, and as he pushes back on China on a lot of these issues, to tell them, we're not going to let you get away with that kind of activity anymore.
So what do they say? Once is a coincidence, twice is happenstance, 3 times is a pattern. We definitely have a pattern here, not only among Democrat politicians, but it seems more specifically among California politicians. So certainly I hope that something is going to be done about that. President Trump's visit to China recently, he was very open. You know, he said, yeah, we know they spy on us, we spy on them. But I think that the conversations behind the scenes were not necessarily as jovial as President Trump made it out to be. One thing that I think many people who criticize the way that President Trump speaks or the decisions that he makes in terms of geopolitics is they forget
about the very different lines of communication that you're going to have. You have one public broadcast that goes out. You have President Trump's messaging on social media. You have the interviews that he does. And then you have the private conversations that he has with heads of state. You have the backdoor diplomacy that's being done through back channels. You have all of these other levels and strata of communication which are going out. And the conversations are going to be very different amongst all of those channels. And at the same time that all of those things are happening and President Trump is pushing for, parity among wages and trade and all of those things, he also has to balance the peace and stability of the entire free world while at the same time pushing for what's best for the people of the United States of America. That is an incredible balancing act. And when you look at nations which are powerful, we'll talk about one of these nations at the very end of the show. And I think the clip I'm going to show you is really going to highlight this. But there are other nations out there who have no problem killing whomever get in their way. Their own desire for power and their own desire to keep their own people as stable and happy and healthy as possible supersede the needs of anybody else. I'm sure that you can guess who that might be. But the reason I wanted to play that clip for you from Senator Banks there is because Representative Chip Roy has just introduced new legislation. And this legislation would explicitly ban Chinese communists, so members of the Chinese Communist Party, and radical Islamists from buying American homes. I am 100% in favor of this. So this new legislation would stop any member of the Chinese Communist Party, any radical Islamists, any other designated foreign adversaries from purchasing homes and real estate here in the United States. I think it's very important to not just make it about homes, okay? This is not just about a single family unit. This should be for business addresses. This should be for farmland. This should be for commercial property. Anything and everything. You go to another country like, say, in Asia, China, Vietnam, etc. As an American, I can't just go there and say, I want to buy a home in China. I want to buy a home in Vietnam. I want to buy a home in Malaysia. And I want to own this land. They're not going to let you do that. So why in the hell do we do that here in the United States? So Chip Roy has declared that American property should belong to American citizens. Good to hear it. Not to geopolitical foes who seek to undermine the country from within. Doesn't mean that we can't allow foreign companies to come here and set up shop and do business here. But certainly, if we do, there needs to be a level of attention paid to them because they could very, very easily be engaging in all forms of espionage, whether it be political, corporate, or social. American homes belong to American families, not to the Chinese Communist Party, foreign Islamists, or our geopolitical foes, he said. While Americans struggle to afford housing, hostile regimes are buying up our land and our neighborhoods. This bill slams the door on foreign adversaries owning American housing and forcing them to sell what they already control. We're putting America's homes back into American hands. Housing affordability is a top issue for American families struggling with high prices and limited inventory, while foreign entities, especially from China, continue to snap up homes, farmland in strategic locations. Let me just posit a situation to you. Let's say that you have like a Chinese company who builds new construction, and they come here to the United States and they buy up a whole bunch of plots of land in an undeveloped area. They build homes outside of Washington, D.C., and then inside those homes, they include listening devices or some cameras or means of snooping. And then people working for the federal government move into those new homes, none the wiser. And then everything that they talk about in the privacy of their own home can be spied on, listened to. And then, of course, that can be used, again, for all different types of espionage, whether it's for political leverage or for blackmail to get people to do what they want to do. I would imagine there's a fair number of those Democrat politicians who were leveraged through blackmail, through the sick behavior that they get up to when they're not doing their jobs. Not that many of them do much of their jobs. But housing affordability is a huge issue here in the United States right now. A lot of families cannot afford to buy homes. If I had to go out and buy a home right now, it wouldn't happen. Like, there would be no way. I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm so lucky that I was able to have bought a home when I did. It's not paid off, but, you know, for the time being, I'm still working on it. But people, especially coming from foreign nations, whether it's China or any other nation that you could possibly imagine, I don't think that foreigners should be allowed to buy property here in the United States. At the end of 2024, foreign ownership in America totaled almost 46 million acres of land and over $86 billion in value, and that's according to the Department of Agriculture. Under Chip Roy's legislation, up to 338,000 acres of that land owned by foreign adversaries could be eligible for divestiture. That would total up to $1.1 billion in property, according to documents reviewed by the Daily Caller. Roy's home state of Texas has one of the highest rates of foreign ownership, with over 5.6 million acres of land reportedly owned by non-Americans. If the legislation is enacted, land in 20 Texas counties totaling up to 124,000 acres could be eligible for divestiture, according to the documents. Chip also introduced recently the Measures Against Marxism's Dangerous Adherents and Noxious Islamists Act, which is the Mamdani Act, which would dramatically expand immigration enforcement by allowing the deportation, denaturalization, denial of entry, or denial of citizenship to any alien who is a member or an advocate for socialist, communist, CCP, or Islamic fundamentalist ideologies. Totally in favor of that as well. Mamdani Act was introduced in April. It targets individuals who do not share American values and instead seeks to import ideologies hostile to the Constitution. What Chip is proposing there used to be the way that we did business here in the United States. We had leaders at that time who were smart enough to know that you don't want to import people who hate the United States of America. You don't want to give refuge and comfort to communists and socialists, because those communists and socialists undoubtedly are going to come here so that they can undermine this republic. When that republic is undermined, then the foundation of our nation is at stake. And we don't have a hope of passing on something that is worth giving to our children and our grandchildren. So the Mamdani Act obviously points to Mayor Zoran Mamdani, who is a naturalized U.S. citizen, also a Democratic socialist. And Roy's office has framed both of these pieces of legislation as essential national security measures that address gaps in current law that have allowed foreign adversaries to gain footholds in American communities through real estate ownership and unchecked migration. We don't want these people here. I am 100% in favor of taking from them and sending them home. Let's get them the hell out of here. Thank you very much to, looks like, Sean Joe for the cookie. Filter Dog, who says, from a live stream, nothing gory. Okay, thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Okay, let's check this out real quick. This is apparently no, that didn't work. This is the live stream from the Trans Day of Violence yesterday. Okay, this is coming from Insider Wire. There's no sound, just so we're clear. Well, kind of. Oh my gosh, look. I bet you these kids are 7'6'4". Hold on, because see the guns? See the gun has that white paint marker on it? Now, if you've been watching the program for, as long as I've been doing it, you'll remember going back to the New Zealand mosque shooter. That was the first time that I ever saw someone who had used that white paint marker to write messages on their guns like that. And that symbol right there, that was like the Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me symbol. That's weird. Okay, so this seems to be a thing that these kids nowadays do when they become a mass shooter, regardless of whether they're trans or not. They write these messages on their guns, and then obviously that is passed on after everything happens. Now, I don't know. I'm Trying to see if I can see some of these messages. That trans shooter in Minneapolis, the one that shut up the school, the kid's school, he did the same thing. And look, there is a swastika on there. Now, I don't know if this is real or not, obviously, with the advent of AI. Oh, look at that. And they've also got the that black sun patch on him, on his chest. So, yeah, I'm really interested to see what they officially say and who says it. But if this might be real, it might not. But we don't have any audio. We don't know the provenance of this. I don't know where Insider Wire got it from. But regardless, thank you very much for sending that over. Yeah, these kids are groomed. You're absolutely correct. These kids get groomed online. Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie and a cookie and a cookie. I appreciate you, brother. Okay, now let's go ahead and jump into some statements that were made by J.D. Vance earlier. So the question of the compensation fund has been a hot topic in the last 24 hours. Todd Blanche was questioned about it earlier today. J.D. Vance was questioned about it during his press conference that he gave. But here in this clip, J.D. Vance speaking once again about the efforts of the fraud task force and also the problems that we have with immigration in this country.
The biggest immigration fraud that existed under the Biden administration, it's not just that they let a flood of people across the southern border. That was obviously a very major problem and something I'm proud of the president for stopping. But it's also that they allowed the asylum and refugee claimant process to become totally fraudulent. And so here's what would happen, right? You would take a person who in normal cases would just be a traditional economic immigrant. Whether you let them into the country or not, they're trying to come because they want a better job, okay? They would come into the country and say that they were fleeing persecution, and they would say that they were an asylum claimant. And then effectively what the Biden administration would do is say, okay, you're an asylee, go into the interior of the country, here's a work permit, maybe come back in 10 or 12 years for your hearing on whether you actually have a legitimate asylum claim. So what did that mean? That meant that person was just completely given amnesty and released into the interior of the country. Well, what if that person was a criminal? What if that person actually had a violent history? We didn't do any of the work necessary to ensure that the people coming into our country claiming to be asylum claimants actually had anything legitimate or anything good in their background. So that is a serious problem. It is something that we have fixed in the Trump administration, but fundamentally that loophole, you're going to see sometime in the future somebody is going to try to exploit that loophole, and it's one of the things that we're very focused on in the fraud task force is making sure that the people who exploited that loophole are actually prosecuted for it, assuming they committed a crime.
And of course, that is one of the most important aspects of this. We've said many times what I don't want to see with all of these fraud investigations is just the foot soldiers getting rounded up. I want to see much larger than that. I want to see the people above them. I want to see the people working in Minnesota state government. Those are the people that I want to see prosecuted. I want to see Tim Walz prosecuted. I want to see Keith Ellison prosecuted. It's so interesting with the situation with Amy Bach. Amy Bach saying that she had actually attempted to blow the whistle on people who were committing acts of fraud. And the people inside the Minnesota state government that were supposed to be checking on these things, they basically didn't want to move on it because they knew that the people that were committing fraud were Somalis. And of course, there was a program within the Minnesota state government to not anger the Somali voting bloc because they needed those people to continue winning elections. So they figured, hey, we'll just let them steal money. Now, here, Todd Blanche is asked about the $1.7 billion anti-weaponization fund. And this is now routinely being narratively stoked as a fund only for President Trump's best friends. And that's obviously not what it is. Take a listen.
President is one, not true. But two, it's very telling that that's the reaction from Democrats, because it proves the point that President Trump has been saying for a very long time, which happens to be true, which was for the first time in our nation's history, you had an administration seek to destroy the previous administration, not just President Trump, anybody that came in contact with him. I've said it before, but you're talking about his gardeners being put in the grand jury, his Secret Service detail being put multiple times in the grand jury. That's what the last administration did to try to destroy President Trump. And he has said publicly, and I very much agree with him, that he doesn't want this to ever happen again to anybody. And so how do you go about making sure it doesn't happen again to anybody? Well, you change the culture, which is what we're doing. You also set up a mechanism where people that did have it weaponized, have this Department of Justice and this federal government weaponized against them, can apply. Does it mean they're going to get money? No, it doesn't mean they're going to get money. It just invites them to apply.
And they make a case of some kind to meet some standard, right?
Yes, and there's a flaw in the legal system because this legal system was not set up to compensate for what the Democrats and what Biden and what Garland did for 4 years. It doesn't know how to cope with the fact that hundreds and hundreds of administration officials had their phones taken from them. Members of the Senate had their phone records subpoenaed and weren't told about it. The system isn't set up for that.
In answers to questions previously put before you this morning, did you took, I assume because what the settlement agreement says, you eliminated certain individuals from being qualified to receive benefits from this fund. What's the list of those individuals?
Well, the plaintiffs in the underlying lawsuit have agreed to accept an apology. So that's President Trump and his sons, I believe. And otherwise, there is no limitation. So whether you're Hunter Biden or whether you're another individual who believed they were a victim of weaponization, they can all apply to this fund. And again, it doesn't mean the commissioners will agree. It doesn't mean that they're getting $10 million or whatever was just read a few minutes ago. It just means that you can apply.
Can you imagine Hunter Biden applying for this fund and saying that he was a victim of government persecution? That would be hilarious. There are a lot of people who were who had the government weaponized against them. Many people who I don't even know that are going to be able to be made whole based upon the amount of money they had to spend on lawyers and essentially having their lives disrupted and turned upside down. But J.D. Vance was also asked about it, and he specifically mentions Tina Peters as a person who should be eligible to gain compensation from this weaponization fund. And obviously, he's 100% correct.
And should people that attacked the Capitol building and assaulted police officers, should they be eligible? Should they receive money? Should they receive money from this fund?
Well, let me say a couple things about that. First, John, I think in some ways the media has misrepresented what this is actually about. This is about compensating Americans for the lawfare that we saw under the last administration. And by the way, anybody can apply for it. Republicans can apply for it. Democrats can apply for it. As you know, the President of the United States has pardoned a number of Democrats who he felt were actually subject to this lawfare. I mean, if Hunter Biden wants to apply for this particular fund, he is welcome to. It's going to go through a normal process where we vet everything, where we try to identify whether people's claims are actually legitimate. But here's the question. You say, why should taxpayers fund this? Whenever the United States government incurs legal expenses, it pays out those legal expenses. When it's settling a lawsuit, it pays out money to settle that lawsuit. And the question is $1 of this money going to the Trump administration? No. Is $1 of this money going to Donald Trump personally? No. Is $1 of this money going to Donald Trump's family? No. The people that would get the money are people, some of whom have been prosecuted completely disproportionate to any crime they've ever committed. Like, let's just take a couple of examples. Tina Peters is this woman who is about to get out of prison, thanks in large part to the president's good work in Colorado. This is a woman who, at worst, if you believe everything that the prosecutors said about her, committed misdemeanor trespassing, and somebody threw the book at her. This innocent grandmother was going to spend 10 years in prison, completely disproportionate to any misdemeanor trespassing that I've ever seen. Was that fair? No. Is it reasonable for her to get some compensation for the fact that she was treated unfairly? I think the answer is yes, and I think that what we're going to see, hopefully, is the entire country, led by this Department of Justice, turning the page on the lawfare. What I would like to propose, and I think the Democrats, hopefully they're willing to meet us halfway here. I won't hold my breath. But what I would propose is something very simple, that if you are willing to turn the page on Joe Biden's lawfare, why don't we prosecute people? Very simple principle. Why don't we prosecute people who violate the law? Let's not prosecute people because they said the wrong thing or because they had the wrong political candidate or because...
All right, so Just the News has just reported that the manifesto that I mentioned at the start of the show has, in fact, been released. Now, I have the reporting from Just the News, and then I have what appears to be selected passages from the manifesto. So let's check this out. San Diego authorities confirmed Tuesday that the two suspected shooters left behind a hate-filled manifesto that shed light on the motives of the crime. The suspects have been identified now by San Diego police as 17-year-old Kane Clark and 18-year-old Caleb Vasquez. The pair died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. The manifesto included the same Nazi imagery that Clark donned in the live stream video, so that seems to verify that what we saw in that video was, in fact, true. The black sun and the Atomwaffen symbols, which are linked to Nazi Germany sympathizers. He said, "I am a straight male. I am certainly not left-wing, nor am I right-wing, especially not with MAGA or Trump. Politically, I'd call myself a third positionist, specifically aligning with National Socialism and eco-fascism, though any form of third positionism." Vasquez is the one who wrote in the memo. The number one goal of this new crusade is to restart and bring back the momentum that St. Tarrant had started. I'm not familiar with St. Tarrant. We'll look that up in a moment. To convince many other would-be saints that the time is now, and most importantly, to kickstart the race war. Okay, these guys are definitely going to be aligned with 764. What was I religiously? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. As a friend once said, my religion is the white race. The manifesto also details the pair's beliefs, derogatory, racist views targeting a number of groups, including Muslims, Jews, and gay people. So maybe the stuff about him being trans is not true, but he kind of looks trans. Authorities said they are still going through the manifesto and other writings, but two suspects met and were radicalized online. Investigators are also looking at their devices. I'm gonna call it and say these guys are going to have some type of an association with 764 or any other number of those offshoots like 09A, that sort of thing. Let's see. So this guy, this is Alec Lace, some guy online. Don't know how true it is. Caleb Clark and Kane Clark and Caleb Velasquez did live stream the attack. Kane killed Caleb, then himself. Manifesto recovered, but at this time it was not released. Met online, described as companions. Kane was the trans one. Neighbor said Kane had blue and green hair. Here is a copy of what appears to be that manifesto. And you can see it has the those symbols included there. The New Crusade, the Sons of Tarrant. And let's see. My name is Caleb Vasquez. At the time of writing this, I'm 18 years old, and some possibly remain this age forever. Only you know. I am half Spanish, some French, half Northern Mexican, which would make me about 70 to 85% European genetic descent. Knowing how many of you see Nick Fuentes, you'll probably just see me as a LARPing spick, but that's honestly fine, and I could care less. Yes, I had some mental issues, which I'm sure will come out eventually, so I won't waste any time talking about it here. People will make all types of assumptions about what I was, so I'm going to make that info clear. I am a straight male. I am not left or right wing, not aligned with MAGA or Trump. Politically, I'm third positionist, Nazi, National Socialism, eco-fascism, third positionism, especially those that prioritize its people, nationalism, racial homogeneity, nature, traditionalist ideals, etc., is one I agree with and would follow. What was I religiously? Doesn't matter. My religion is the white race. Goals and objectives of the crusade. What are you hoping to achieve? I'm so glad you asked. Before Tarrant, there were a decent amount of people that fought in our interests, but they were few and far between. After Tarrant, though, is a much different story. In the same year that Brenton Tarrant had done his okay, I think that's the guy from the mosque shooter in New Zealand. Yes, and this is another aspect of 09A and 764. They like idolize these shooters, those girls that I talked about a couple of months ago who were trying to kill that kid in the bathroom so that they could resurrect Adam Lanza. Same thing. They were into the same stuff. Brenton Tarrant. Yeah, he was the New Zealand Christchurch shooter. That's right. After he had done his attack on full display for the world, and many other saints came out of the woodwork in a relatively short time, such as John Ernst, Patrick Crusius, Philip Manhouse, and Stephen Balliant. But then, like so many other things, COVID came and halted the momentum, and now it has gone back to much the same as before, with only a few notable events happening every so often. However, in the last year or so, the frequency of these events has increased, and my hope is to take advantage of that. The number one goal of this new crusade is to restart and bring back the momentum that St. Tarrant had started, to convince many other would-be saints that the time is now, and most importantly, to kickstart the race war. There's so many of us that have considered it, and just imagine what could be if we all got up and finally followed through and just did something, fought back. Well, how'd that work out for you? The future is yours, white man. Don't just sit down and let them take it from you. All violence is good violence, even from the enemy. No, especially from the enemy. Another animalistic, violent N-word is some crazy radical Islamist going out and killing some innocent and unsuspecting white will do more for our cause than we ourselves could do. When it hits the news of another attack against a white person, especially with our young, it'll radicalize people. So let's say if a couple thousand people become radicalized from it, one of them is bound to do something and return the favor. Then the enemy will do something back. N-words are quite tribalistic with their own in this way, a trait we seriously need to follow, thus creating a cycle of revenge attacks that will only cause more and increase how often they happen. There is no problem with that violence cannot solve. One must just know how and where to direct it for favorable results and actions. And the universal enemy. Everyone has their own idea who is to blame for all the wrong in the world. They say it's the government, the elite, the rich, the politicians, the 1%, the left, the right, the capitalists, the communists, the Illuminati, the fags and the trannies, the immigrants, and many more. All of them can be traced back to be caused by one group, the Jews. It's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. The Jews across all of time have been behind an extremely disproportionate amount of the world's problems, whether that be from war, famine, exploitation of children, rise in degeneracy, infighting of people, political killings, the separation of family, the departure from the church, the white race's replacement, mass immigration, central banking systems, and so on. It has always been and always will be the Jews. There is no moderate option to this problem. They'll always rise back to power or do the same again whenever you exile them. So for any sane man seeing all of this, the only logical solution would just be to kill them all. All right. So yeah, this guy was definitely deep into all of that shit. Okay. So I wonder if this is going to get taken down because it's right in line with all of the other people who came along before him. It's crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. All right. Well, obviously that did not work out well for that kid because he's certainly not going to see a better world be brought about as a result. This is, unfortunately for him, not going to galvanize people. I don't think it's going to lead to what he wants it to be. And it is unfortunate and sad to see it happening. All right. So now let's get back into the conversation about acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. So Todd Blanche was being questioned by the senator who had mimosas with the Maryland man. And it was an interesting conversation. Let's take a listen.
The Attorney General is supposed to be the people's lawyer and defend the rule of law and not act as the president's personal lawyer. But in this administration, the Department of Justice is solely focused on pleasing one man, no matter the cost. Lest anyone forget, huge banners with Donald Trump's face hang from both sides of the main Justice building.
And I just want to say, I am totally in favor of that. I think the Department of Justice, part of the executive branch, should remember at all times which administration it is that they're serving in. And the people at the Department of Justice who were complicit and acted accordingly with the plot to destroy President Trump, using the power of the government weaponized against a private citizen who was also a political candidate, those people need to be reminded so that if they get any stupid ideas in their heads, that they're going to find out very quickly what it means to be held accountable.
And I think that there are still many people within the Department of Justice who need to be held criminally accountable. So if it bothers people like Senator Chris Van Hollen, 100% I am in favor of it. It doesn't mean that Todd Blanche is doing the bidding of President Trump. Although, again, as the head of the Justice Department, which is an executive office under the president within the executive branch, the president has every right to say there are crimes being committed. I think that the Department of Justice should do their damn job.
This is the big banner of Donald Trump on one side of it, so that every single person who enters that building will see it and remember exactly what that man wants them to do. You're his former personal attorney, and you know exactly what he wants. In fact, he often posts it right here on social media, his Truth Social account. He wants to weaponize the department for his own political ends. And right from the start, you and your cohorts have worked to deliver what he wants, doing his political dirty work. 2 days ago, you even suggested that there was, quote, a ton of evidence that the 2020 election was rigged against Trump. And here you are at a budget hearing asking for taxpayer funds to pursue the department's mission when you're using those funds to punish Trump's adversaries, reward his friends, and pursue his personal vendettas.
Again, Senator Chris Van Hollen suffers from a mean case of TDS. That exchange did not end there because Todd Blanche, of course, had to respond. In this exchange, Van Hollen is insinuating that a child molester who also happened to have received a pardon from President Trump for what happened on January 6th was attempting to buy off his victims with a promise of a payment from this weaponization fund. Now, the only problem is that weaponization fund did not exist when this person committed their crime, and that person is going to prison. So the pardon they received for the events of January 6th has nothing to do with the crimes that they committed. It is unfortunate, but of course, if that person had not committed crimes prior to receiving their pardon for the events of January 6th, how in the hell was anybody supposed to know? You know, all people can do is attempt to make right the sins that have come before them. That's exactly what President Trump did by giving those pardons for people who were improperly prosecuted for the events of January 6th. And it just so happens that one of those people happened to have been a bad person. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
There's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of, quote, people named.
How about Ghislaine Maxwell? Can you commit that you will?
Yes, I can commit to that, of course.
Okay. Let me go back to this slush fund, because there's also an individual who, after being pardoned by the president, went on to molest 2 children. And that person actually tried to buy the silence of these children by saying that he would pay them some of the funds that he was hoping to get from your slush fund. Can you commit to making the rules so that that person is not eligible for a payout under this fund?
Well, you're obviously lying in your question, because there's no way that this person committed to that. The slush fund, as you call it, which is not, didn't exist.
I'm sure,
but I can commit.
Mr. Attorney General, don't ever do that again. I am reporting
what again?
What he said. He said on the expectation that he hoped to get some of the funds from a payout. He's been hearing
you said from the slush fund, Senator, and that didn't exist when he said that.
This is the fund that the president and all of you have been telegraphing all along that you're going to use to help the president's friends.
Can you point to a single telegraph I made? What telegraph did I make?
I have a last question for you. Do you know that it is a criminal offense to lie to Congress?
I am very well aware of that.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Senator Kennedy.
Of course he's aware of it. Also, I found the full manifesto. Dude, it is much, 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 much longer. He says a lot more. Yeah, I'm saving a copy of this before it gets deleted from the internet forever. But it's very similar to, you know, every other kid shooter manifesto that was, you know, essentially bought into everything that we just read. So I'll have to obviously read it off air because it's like 50 pages long. All right. Blanche is totally based. This is one of the reasons I love Todd Blanche. This is one of the reasons why I thought he was a good choice when President Trump came into office, because Todd Blanche defended President Trump throughout his time in his off season, if you will. And he was there witnessing the behavior of the government being weaponized against him. And of course, they came for Todd Blanche at the same time that they were coming for President Trump. Todd Blanche is loyal to the president. Todd Blanche, in my opinion, knows exactly what needs to be done to change things at the Department of Justice. And he understands what President Trump's mandate is. So Todd Blanche, in my opinion, is a good dude. I like what he's doing. And I think that the work of the DOJ has really accelerated under his careful watch. Now, if you want to talk about some incredible hypocrisy, we need to talk about Andrew Weissmann. Andrew Weissmann, as I know all of you is aware, is one of the architects of the grand conspiracy, and he has been historically one of the most corrupt people in Washington, D.C. He was directly involved in the Russiagate collusion hoax. He was one of the architects of that hoax. And now, hilariously, he is talking about needing to criminalize the act of lying in the United States, which is hilarious because the entire Russiagate collusion hoax was a lie that was perpetrated on the American public for years. Millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars were wasted when Andrew Weissmann was like the number 2 on the Mueller report investigation. And Andrew Weissmann continues to lie on a regular basis, telling falsehoods about the president of the United States. And in this podcast appearance, he says that the government needs to criminalize what they deem to be political lies. And of course, he is focusing his ire on President Trump and the claims about the 2020 election having been stolen. The fact that this is coming out, the fact that it's being revealed, the fact that Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general of the United States of America, who just said that there's all kinds of evidence the election was stolen, and by the way, it is being investigated criminally, and the Department of Justice is going into states all around the country to specifically find those who were involved in the theft of the 2020 election. People like Andrew Weissmann, people like Mark Elias, people like Norm Eisen, they are shitting bricks. They are waiting for their turn to come around on the wheel of life, if you will. So during this segment, Andrew Weissmann goes on this rant about rampant political lying. He cites an article from the Washington Post, 30,000 alleged lies that were told during President Trump's first term. And he also suggests that it was far more than 30,000 lies. But he obviously does not mention anything about the Russia collusion hoax, Russiagate being a lie, the fact that it was cooked up by Hillary Clinton's campaign, the fact that she had FEC violations for having the the Steele dossier bought and paid for, the fact that it was laundered into the media through a number of sympathetic politicos in Washington, D.C., like, of course, no-name John McCain, all of it done to delegitimize President Trump's win in 2016. So Weissmann said, what I've started thinking about is why is it that there are lies in so many ways in this country that we either criminalize or subject to civil penalties, but we don't do that for politicians who lie or candidates who lie. The big lie in my book is that I use is the example of the 2020 election being stolen. There's no proof of that. Bullshit. You can wait. You can sit back, Andrew Weissmann, because you will be proven wrong very, very soon. Now, if that's not bad enough, take a look at this. This is Hakeem Jeffries, once again, directing his ire at President Trump and the people of the United States of America. And again, I go back to the need for success with Trump 2.0. If President Trump and the administration is not successful in holding these people criminally accountable and moving them out of the halls of power, stopping them from their ultimate goal of completely subverting our republic, destroying it in perpetuity, and placing themselves in power without any check on their usage of that power, then these people are coming for us. And here in this clip, listen to what Hakeem Jeffries says about what he wants to do to supporters of President Trump.
I guess part of how we as House Democrats view this moment, either MAGA extremists are going to break the country or we're going to break them. And our goal is to break them. We will defeat them. We have to beat them electorally, and then we have to break their spirit because of the extremism that's being unleashed on the American people. That's completely and totally unacceptable. I guess
So defeat us and then break our spirit. Well, guess what? You're not going to break our spirit. That's not going to happen. G. Fontes says, how did the Jews create black people, plus all other non-Caucasians that make up 95% of humanity, to outnumber the Jews by such a great percentage? Too rational a thought for the killers. It is. It definitely is. Yeah. It completely ignores. Well, actually, he does go into pretty great detail, a whole bunch of things about other races in there, but we just don't have the time to go through it. All right. Now, I would like to close out the show today by talking about a couple of wonderful announcements related to fraud. In Los Angeles, California, we have yet another criminal actor who stole $500 million, this time using a new fraudulent method that we haven't identified before, but this is renewable fuel tax credit fraud schemes. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the report from ABC7 in Los Angeles.
The Armenian mafia in Los Angeles was sentenced to 40 years in prison for his role in a billion-dollar scheme to rip off American taxpayers. Levon Termenzian, also known as the Lion, was convicted of conspiring with members of a polygamous sect in Utah known as the Order in one of the most audacious tax frauds in history. Levon was a Bel Air billionaire and gas station tycoon when he joined forces with members of the polygamous Kingston clan. Jacob Kingston took a plea deal and testified against Levon, telling jurors they had more money than they could launder, so they started buying Lamborghinis, Bugattis, private jets, yachts, and mansions in Turkey, Huntington Beach, and Utah. Prosecutors say Levon employed a team of corrupt law enforcement officers, including former DHS agent Felix Cisneros, also former Glendale detective John Belian, and former FBI agent Bobak Brumand. Jacob Kingston was also sentenced today to 18 years in prison. The Armenian.
So a host of people pleading guilty, getting sentenced. This Armenian mafia representative had so much money, he couldn't launder it all. He had to start buying luxury cars like Lambos, Bugattis. He had private jets, yachts. He had mansions in Turkey, in Huntington Beach, in Utah. I don't know if he was living amongst that polygamous sect of Mormons, but prosecutors say Levon employed a team of corrupt law enforcement officials, and this was the part of it that got me so jazzed up. Like she said, including former DHS agent Felix Cisneros, former Glendale detective John Cerro Balian, and former FBI agent Babak Brumand. Most of the audacious tax frauds in history, one of the most audacious tax frauds in history, Levon was a Bel Air billionaire and gas station tycoon. And like always, it's just another foreigner stealing our money. I don't care where they came from. They just happen to be from another country. The company was called Washakie Renewable Energy. What they would do is file false claims saying they would produce and sell hundreds of millions of gallons of qualifying biodiesel, most of which never existed, or they were saying that they recycled paper. They submitted the paperwork to the IRS, claiming massive biodiesel output from their Utah plant, and they would create these falsified records with the help of that polygamous sect that she mentioned. They would create fake import records and transportation logs to make it look like they were legitimately producing fuel from waste oils and grease. They got over $511 million in IRS payouts. And then they laundered those proceeds through billions of dollars in fake transactions across multiple bank accounts. When they couldn't launder the money anymore because it was too much money, that's when they had to start buying the mansions and the cars. We obviously were on the hook for that because the IRS would pay that money out. Nothing was coming into the system, and it was just coming out of our pockets. Such bullshit. I'm glad that they caught them, but I'm even more glad that they caught, along with him, the corrupt public servants that were assisting him. And all those people are now going to prison for decades. Good riddance to bad rubbish.
All right. Now, we also have a new announcement coming from Linda McMahon at the Department of Education. Now, we had learned previously about tens of millions of dollars in fraudulent financial aid that was going out from the Department of Education, but now that number is up to more than $1 billion. So during the Biden administration, the federal student aid system was just a trough for fraudsters to come in and feed on free money. And Linda McMahon says that many of these people were totally fake. There were fake students. They were dead students. They were just using names and identities, and people were stealing money from the system. So she revealed the Department of Education uncovered widespread abuse in the federal aid system. There were bot-driven applications, these ghost students, and again, dead individuals receiving financial aid. I can't believe that it was that easy to steal money. She laid it all out. The administration has completely revamped the FAFSA program with ironclad real-time identity verification, and they're already saving us billions of dollars, effectively stopping billions of dollars from fraud being able to go out and end up in these people's pockets.
I'm really proud of one of the things that we've done, and that is we've just really totally revamped the FAFSA program, which is the applications that students fill out, for student aid as they're going to college. But as like many things in the government, we found that there was a lot of fraud going on, that there were bots that were applying for these loans, there were ghost students, there were dead people who were getting these loans, et cetera. And so we really did enforce and tweak this entire system so that we have this real-time fraud identity now. And it's as simple as showing an ID, online to show who you are when you're applying for these loans. And last year, we kept $1 billion of fraud money from going out. And just in the first, 2 weeks of revamping this program this year, we've saved, about $60 million. So it's very effective. And I'm very pleased that we are going to be able to save taxpayers, billions of dollars with it.
You know what else that's going to do? Theoretically, that could lower the cost of education, because the less money that is going out and increasing the output, it's going to have an effect on universities. They're not going to be getting as much of this money, because there's no way that all of that financial aid was only going into the pockets of fraudulent people, dead people, etc. That money initially goes to the universities, and the universities are going to capture a portion of that money before the disbursement is made to the student, the fake student, the dead student, whomever it is. Linda McMahon is also not only the Secretary of Education, but she disbanded the entire agency. She's got herself and I think 2 employees. So she is obviously making great effect inside the federal government with the minimal amount of help that is necessary. It is incredibly disgusting to realize how large the Department of Education was previously compared to how much fraud was taking place. It was like the lights were on, but nobody was home. That's how easy it was to just go ahead and rip off the federal government. Now, we have another individual who has just been caught. This is the former Affairs for Black People Committee chair in North Carolina, who was just indicted for fraud. She was embezzling tens of thousands of dollars in campaign cash. She would, of course, spend it on herself. She would get her hair and makeup done. She is a leftist and obviously a DEI proponent. Let's take a listen.
Breaking news, a former political chair of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People Political Action Committee has been indicted and charged with embezzlement.
Yeah, Cassandra Shayna Stokes is charged with 2 counts of embezzlement and 1 count of obtaining property by false pretenses. That's according to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. In a release, the SBI says that she's accused of embezzling more than $74,000. The Durham County District Attorney's Office called for an investigation focusing on the potential mishandling of PAC funds and financial activities that took place during 2023 and 2024.
So, another thing that occurs to me is that I highly doubt that people who get caught doing something like this just broke bad in 2023. She already most likely had a loose set of morals, probably didn't care about engaging in fraud or theft or abuse of power. So it makes me wonder, how much else have these people done? that they haven't been caught for, how much more money is out there that, should have gone to good causes. It is, it's pretty insane. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close it out there. I just have one more message from our friends over on Rumble, and that will be... Actually, it looks like I need to refresh my screen. 1 second. And let me make sure that my microphone is correct. Yes, it is. Okay. So yeah, for some reason, if I haven't done something in Rumble Studio for a while, it won't let me do anything, and then I have to reboot it. But that's okay. All right. So parents, grandparents, anybody who's got kids in the audience, time for a very quick message about America's 250th birthday. Obviously, we had the rededication ceremony this past weekend. We've got 250 years of history in our country, freedom, grit, sacrifice, and of course, the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever known. So it's the perfect opportunity to help your kids and grandkids understand why this country is special, why it matters. There is a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday, and it's a great way to do just that. It'll teach them who the founding fathers were, what it was they risked, and why those ideas they were fighting for were important then and matter today. The guide is going to send them back to the moment those brave men signed the Declaration of Independence, and of course they did so knowing full well they were putting their lives, their livelihood, their families on the line, but it was worth it because it's all going to break it down in a way that kids are going to understand and will help them enjoy it. So if you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and helping them understand why it's worth preserving, this is definitely something you're going to want to grab. It is completely free with this special offer. You just pay $2 for the shipping and postage. And to pick one of these up, you go to freeusabirthday.com or that QR code on screen, freeusabirthday.com, and you can pick up the Kid's Guide to America's 250th birthday today. Because America's story matters, let's make sure the next generation is aware. Okay. Thank you very much to them, and thank you very much to you guys here. Let's go through the final thank yous over here on Rumble. Thank you to Sean Joe for 3 cookies. Thank you to Filter Dog, and I think that this is the Cornyn update that we read earlier, but I will check it out just to be certain. Yes, this is him canceling his campaign for the week. Well, I mean, yeah, he knows he's going to lose. Let's see. Filter Dog also says, just called, Trump endorsed Andy Barr, has won the Kentucky U.S. Senate primary, replacing Mitch McConnell. Yes, Mitch McConnell was not running this time. Andy Barr, which one was Andy Barr? There were, Andy Barr, I think, was the guy that President Trump endorsed because Nate, the garbage guy, dropped out to become an ambassador. Okay, I don't know much about Andy Barr at all. Except that President Trump endorsed him. For anybody in Kentucky, okay, so here, okay, yeah, Cameron was the guy that was like Mitch McConnell's protege, who I thought was kind of a snake. So all I can say is I hope that Andy Barr is going to be better than Mitch McConnell. I think it'll be difficult to be any worse than Mitch McConnell. So yes, thank you very much, everybody, for hanging out with us today. We will have more news tomorrow at 5 p.m. right here, Red Pill News Live. I appreciate y'all. Final thank yous over here on Rumble to ZBM, lurking while feeding the goslings. A little tip, if y'all ever get into raising meat birds, do not incubate some of the goose eggs and then raise them in your house. They will be named and therefore no goose dinners. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. I respect people who raise their own animals for meat, but that's the sticking point right there. If they become pets, you are not going to be able to slaughter them and then make use of them as you were hoping you might. Okay, you guys, thank you everybody for being here. Good luck. God bless. And I will see you tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, we'll see ya.
Do me a favor and hit that like button, everybody.